Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. All knowledge is artwork. Actually, it should be all of knowledge is artwork. I wanted to speak about an interesting insight that when we look at what is in our sight, it is not there before and it emerges. And when we look at what is art, it is an awareness to a sort of state where there's nothing there, then something else arrives. You know? So it seems like life, especially with where the free will is positioned, the person opens their eyes, lives moment to moment, and how they know the moment, think of as if having different brushes. There's stuff that it's as if like the person is painting the moment, but also the world is moving the moment as well. That means the knowledge I have in this moment doesn't just depend on who I am, it also depends on the room, the space, everything from the color of the walls to the positioning of the stuff, you know. So knowledge is kind of like artwork, you know, the whole creative emergence of phenomena. Now, the thing about artwork is that who is drawing it? So in the subtitle, you'll see I've put the question, who draws the moment? And so it's like wondering as instant as right now as I'm saying these words, where are these words arising from? You know? And anything we look at, because we look at a form, we consider it to be a form. A form can't just appear out of nothing, so it reverts back to, I would say, different events. For example, our evolution is an echo of how we adjusted long ago. When I look at knowledge, I can't fathom it being anything other than instantaneous. That means the action of knowing, how a person knows something. What that means is you can conduct an experiment, but the result, when you see it, you know the result in an instant. Really, what is going on is that a lot of stuff is moving, and human beings are choosing what to accept from all that's moving. We're cherry picking what is familiar. Will Durant says knowledge is the eye of desire and can become the pilot of the soul. We are receiving the moment. And an act of reception is simultaneously something that's being expressed to you. Knowledge is the artwork of the senses. How we know things is how we are in position and how the world is in position. And based on how much we feel we are the world defines our position. You know, knowledge is work, it's movement. If we could not move, if we were all statues, if there was no sound, there would be no word knowledge. Really, what it is, it's an event taking place. We ascribe meaning. We create the V, the W, we put the WE, but we are known journeyers of an unknown world, or unknown journeyers of a known world. When I wonder about my mind, it's not like an object. You know, a person can't be like, my mind looks like this. Oh well, you know, it's like the mind is moving. So I would say this is the difference between ideological knowledge and experiential knowledge. The experiential knowledge doesn't need the word knowledge because it instantly knows. That means if the person hasn't skydived, you skydive, you dive into that sky, it's instant. Experientially, you know what skydiving is in that moment. But when it comes to belief or disbelief, because there is an absence of experiential knowing. So what it means is you are either creating the artwork and knowing it, or the artwork is being created and it's being given to the person. one must first not know before they can know. And what tends to happen is that I find the person uses a model of perception, a model of a sort of value system to the moment. And either that value system updates, it extends, it expands, or the value system, you stay in it, or you get rid of it and you walk towards the new. Sometimes I kind of feel really being called towards this. I call this concept parachuting out of the life you're living. Or I've spoken about it in the sense of a pilot of consciousness. Imagine a pilot in one of those like fighter airplanes suddenly ejecting out of the airplane. So the human being, based on the value system entertained, either the airplane can be controlled, either the airplane, or I would say it like this, either the airplane is fine the way it is, either something from the airplane needs to change, or the person in the airplane needs to change. When a person can't go further, let's say in an airplane, the airplane is not functional anymore, the person has to leave the airplane. It's like you don't want a flat tire in the sky. So I feel we as human beings, we live through stories. The whole point we talk to each other is even because of stories, to get access to new stories, to find new ways of looking at things. I just noticed a very interesting trend. Um, in When we look at the Aztecs, the Mayans, they were like a bit too savage and extreme. They would sacrifice people to their fiction. Now, what happened to, I would say, after physical sacrifice, it became the ideological sacrifice. And we in ancient times see this. Pretty much back in the day when people suffered, they're like, okay, if I'm a person, I suffer, probably I shouldn't be a person. You know? That means once the attitude to how the personality was changed, the outcome changed. You know, if we perceived the mind as an unknown painter, that this mind in different moments is painting different thoughts, different projections of itself. Now, the mind is painting with the sensory perception an ego. Now, the ego is the artwork. The ego, you need to have an individuality and I thought to be able to even know something. That means a person can't seek knowledge unless there's a knower there first. You can't hold something if your hands are full. When the hands are empty, then there's an opportunity to grasp something new. Now, my true opinion on the unknown mind painting its own manifestation moment to moment based on the environment's change and the self's change based on how the world changes and in accordance to how the self changes. The artwork is not the painter. The visible is not the force. I would say visibility is the effect of a force. The cause of the most immediate force is unknown. I would say we don't know enough about energy as a species, as even a being. The mysteries of energy, the mysteries of nature, they surpass man's conception. That means think about moments in life where you trusted something or you followed some sort of, I don't know, let's say you were in an emergency and you somehow got out of that emergency. It was as if the scene had an artwork, had a sort of structure, had a design to it, and the person had to trust a totally different design to navigate out of that previous design. We process information. So you can say, like, when a person, okay, think of it this way. Imagine we're candles. Now imagine instead of the top of a candle, the candle flame emanating light, the candle flame is taking light. You know? We are like a temporary receiver of the environment. And if you really think about how many things human beings have received from the beginning of their life, and how much of it they have expressed, I would say a tiny percentage of what one receives from the world they express. Sometimes I wonder, could the unknown be too unfathomable, and that's why we are gripping onto having to know things in certain ways? It's strange. The more the person actually is materialistic, the more there is destiny. The more it's evident what the destiny of all the cells that are being the individual, this composure of identity. If you are just stuff in space, the how would I say it? Your atoms are ancient. We are stardust. So the destiny of the outer realms is stardust is just hovering in space. We are literally stuff that's hovered in space that is stabilized somehow. When I look at how I know things in the outer realms, they're there. And when I wonder how I know things from the inner realms, it's the same. It's there already. Consciousness is there. The mind is actually, it's not like something you could say, the only switch is to be conscious. That means when you wake up in the morning, you activate an opportunity to be something. In the dream state, usually dreams are automated. In the deep sleep state, there's no content. In the conscious waking state is where there is enough content, shape, form, and design to do something. Now, the issue is in our conscious waking state, due to the creation of the concept of linear time and the concept of space being empty, these are two things, these two ideas, space and time, you know, I would say for me there's an error in these two concepts. One, I don't perceive space to be complete emptiness. I feel space isn't empty. We may not be able to perceive any content to it, but it's not empty. The second thing is time is not just linear. Time is literally you stepped on paint and you're walking on a white hallway. That's time, the trail of existential form as a character in a story. Because if I'm not a character, you think like a rock on a mountain wears a watch. No, the animal that has noticed its own temporality is choosing to use time to at least organize itself to have a sort of efficiency before it closes its eyes completely. You see, everybody closes their eyes, when you sleep. But the point is before the ultimate opportunity, because technically we experientially die every day and we're reborn the next day. Even Gandhi has this quote where he's like, when I sleep, literally he's saying that. He's saying when he sleeps, every day he wakes up, he sees himself as a new being. As a new being. Can you consider the amount of freedom? Imagine every day you woke up, you had memory, you had everything, you knew the other days, but you could somehow live as if it was the first day on earth. How would things look so new to you? They would. What I mean is experientially, we're dying and being reborn all the time. Existentially is the question. And even the question becomes hollow because if we are thinking about the afterlife, we're missing the life that is here now. Imagine the person went up to the pearly gates, and was about to walk in. Suddenly a voice said, "You can't enter." And the person was like, "Why? Why can't I enter?" And a voice came, imagine, from the pearly gates. It's because the whole time you were on earth, you were trying to get here, so you never actually lived on earth. See, that is the issue of when you can say time possesses a person. That means an angry person is possessed by the past, you can say, or a certain outcome they've considered absolute in the future. But I would say to be possessed by the future means to forget the past. What I sometimes feel when I look at politics is in regards to the conservative liberal or the Republic Democratic, it's something where it's like the traditional is trying to keep something alive to the modern, and the modern is also trying to educate, change the old. It's like the old doesn't want to change and the old wants to change. And that's pretty much the politics of everywhere. The new wants to change, the old doesn't. And people think politics is so complex that children are not getting engaged in their nation's psychology. You know, the politics of a nation is the psychology of a nation. I would say when you look at different nations and their ideological systems, like people have to know the value of their position. If you're among fools, there is the danger of believing yourself to be a fool as well. We should authorize anger, but only at oneself. That means the only time to get angry where anger is allowed is when you get angry at yourself. It doesn't mean the person has to do anything, but it just means that, you see, we are human beings. That means it's like a person can go, I don't know, to among a bunch of robots, try to act like a robot, and will never fit in. And there is so much spontaneity at work. That means if I was to tell you how the psychology of the person is like, I mean, seriously, how many ways does our attention move throughout the day from the beginning we wake up till the time we sleep? How many worlds do we pass by in an instant when our eyes close for a moment? There's this story where I think everybody pretty much knows this story. But this intellectual goes to this Zen master, you know, and the intellectual hears some ideas on Zen, and he's like, "How do you guys how can you guys even fathom emptiness?" You know, and suddenly the person, it's like the person goes and sits by the Zen master, and the Zen master is pouring tea, and this person, this intellectual, begins speaking so much that the Zen master is just in silence listening. And the Zen master pours the cup, as he's pouring tea into the cup of the intellectual who's come to meet the Zen master, the cup overfills, and the Zen master is the intellectual is talking to the Zen master just nonstop. Suddenly, he notices the cup is full, and he's like, "Why are you doing this? It's full. Don't you see it's full?" And the Zen master turns around and says, "Don't you?" And there's a silence. And the bewildered intellect learns to be patient, and in that silence to grow new wings. We have never been anything. All things have been within us. It took me a while to truly accept this, I would say, after I had noticed it, but people are not what we see. They are what they see. And what they see is forever unknown to other eyes. So if we really wanted true freedom, technically that freedom will, on a micro level, be impossible to be the same. That means it's like the planet is one canvas, but everybody wants to have freedom and draw their own painting. Now, on some level, we have to give freedom so people don't get disencouraged and people keep drawing their paintings, but at the same time, these paintings collide. Because really, when we wonder about the state that humanity is, it's the state that humanity has been in. The way our ancestors lived are suggesting the types of roads we're walking on today. And the way we live will suggest how the roads that will be for the future generations. There's a knowledge which is temporary, and it has to do with the relationship of language. How pretty much language has become a sieve for one existential event experientially. The other nature's presence. I'll give you an example, a real example of how we are not the subjects that we're trying so hard to be. That means the person can fathom a future ideal, but as the transitory moment, nature of the moment is noticed, what can you be in a changing world, really? That means this is the example. I ask myself, who knows in this moment? Who is here in this moment? Let's say, let's use that question. Who is here in this moment? I ask this for myself. I say, let's say the online alias Mr. Within is here. Then I ask myself again, so that was one thought, that was one projection. Then I ask myself, who is here? Then my real name comes, Amin. And then I'm like, okay, that's another thought. Then I ask myself, who is here? And if you keep asking the question, you will notice the nature of how the mind is playing whack-a-mole. The mind is playing whack-a-mole with language. And so it suffers when it brands something to be a certain way, but it doesn't happen that way. So what I'm trying to say is that the person, let's say, I'll use another example. Let's say you're a person who's suffering and you think you're suffering and you have failed or whatever. The question comes, who has failed? The answer comes, me, I failed, I did that, I failed. Then a question comes again, who has failed? Then the person thinks again, okay, me, it was me that failed. It's like, again, the person thinks, the question comes, who has failed? And you will see the question can come endlessly. That means you can endlessly be a new view on the current view you have. All that it requires is an effort to see something more. So by the nature of the mind, endlessly, projecting itself in every moment and the environments being different, technically it means we are watching ourself be a self in every moment, in different ways. Guys, I feel like going into a quote tunnel. A quote tunnel, for those who are new, is a segment of the show where I pretty much read a bunch of quotes, either from a certain person in history to see what their inner realms were like, or a certain theme. So this episode's theme is knowledge. Benjamin Franklin, wise men learn by others' harms, fools by their own. That means if you can learn a mistake from someone else, then it's you don't have to be the fool. It's like if the wheel is invented, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The next quote is a Vietnamese proverb. A day of traveling will bring a basket full of learning. Will Rogers, everyone is ignorant only on different subjects. Marcel Proust, instead of seeking new landscapes, develop new eyes. Wow. This quote is it, guys. This quote is I could almost see myself clapping in my inner realms. Samuel Johnson, knowledge is more than equivalent to force. David Garrick, learning is better than house and land. I mean, you technically have to learn what a house is and land is, but I know what he means here. Socrates says people learn more on their own rather than being force-fed. Yeah, of course. I mean, what is better? Forcing food down someone's throat or putting the meal there. If they're hungry, they eat it. If not, they don't eat it. You know? Schools should incorporate a system where children have the whole day to attend all the courses at whatever times, let us say. Let's say the educational system implements this model where the children can, let's say, I don't know, I'm going to make it simple. Let's say imagine there were like 3 topics the educational system had. Imagine, I'm just saying. I'm just saying this to prove a point. Imagine like the educational system, there was a mathematics, I don't know, language, and history. Imagine there was these three courses, okay? So the child would have the whole day to go into these three courses in the whole day. That means it doesn't matter. The child can take its time. If it's attending the class and it doesn't understand it, it can attend, it can like leave the class, go attend another class, and then if it wants to later on that day come and attend the same class. Do you see? So I'm saying it's like where time is not an issue. Time is what's making children feel their knowledge is being force fed to them. The time restriction. If time wasn't there, sometimes personally, when there's a really important problem I have to solve, I just sit there and give myself endless time. For me, like it's like to see something in an efficient way means you got to have the patience to be like, okay, I saw the inefficient, next inefficient, okay, that was inefficient, 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 oh my god, suddenly you see the efficient. That's what patience does. Sometimes if the person has a single pointedness to how their attention is being them, time can change. The same way the person can feel timeless, you can feel like endless timelines. What does that mean? That means we have this idea in quantum, not quantum, parallel universe theory, the idea of multiverses, the idea that we're not in one universe, we're in multiple. Now, this notion of the multiverse can get so complex because it could be like in one dimension, in one universe, you're combing your hair left, in another universe, you're combing your hair right, or it could be a multidimensionality that has a curvature. It could be multidimensionality like the petals of a flower. Or it could be some sort of Fibonacci sequence multidimensionality that our minds can't fathom yet, you know? Really, when it comes to teaching, Galileo says you cannot teach a man anything. You can only make the person realize it within themselves. That's it. You can never teach anyone anything, really. Teaching is not something, it's literally like eating. If the person's hungry, they instantly learn. If they're not hungry, they don't care. So that means you could say all the children in classrooms that they don't pay attention, they're not hungry. They're literally not hungry. They're like, who is this person in front of me speaking? You know? When I was in school, definitely there was moments where I would just look at the teacher and I'd be like, who is this guy speaking at, you know? But every moment, if you're wise, can have value. You know, you can say the smart person looks at the fool, and in the same way, the wise person looks at the smart person. The wise person acknowledges how there's emptiness, so no one value in the value system of the person can dominate the reality. This may be a strange way of putting it, but it's like the wise people on this planet, they see duality, but they don't touch it. They don't identify with it as attention. Socrates, I read that. Benjamin Franklin says, presumption first blinds a man, then sets him a running. Wow. So when the person assumes something, let us say, that assumption or assumes absolutely, that would be an absolute assumption, would let's say be. That means, let's say somebody, person A is in the park, person B is speaking, person B says something person A doesn't like, and imagine person A says, person B is bad like this, you know? And then the rest of the conversation of person B, person A wouldn't listen because just the first part made the person not want to see the rest. Honestly, I don't know how people can care to listen to others if they don't see it as artwork occurring in the inner realms. Proper listening should be that you can close your eyes and see a movie behind your eyes. You know, if this transition is made, I will tell you, everybody will remember everything. When I was younger, my I would say my inner realms, it was very like maybe I could visualize. I don't know. Send giant. I had seen like letters on a chalkboard, so I could visualize letters everywhere. I could look at any wall and visualize a letter on the wall. You know, but it was so robotic. There was something natural missing from my own life when I look back at my youth. And to be honest, what it is it's fear and ignorance. That means any person who can defeat one of these will soon be able to defeat the other. If you get rid of ignorance, your fear will go away. If you get rid of fear, your ignorance will go away. Because then the person doesn't fear looking at the whole system. Anyways, guys, this next is a Bahamian yeah, I mean Bahamian proverb. The shoe knows if the stocking has a hole. Benjamin Franklin again. What signifies knowing the names if you know not the nature of things? Wow. Benjamin Franklin is literally, um, if this sentence was written in on university walls, the sentence from Benjamin Franklin, do you know philosophers how many people with actual questions about the world will arise right now, because we're all trying to fit into this like a cool commercial a society, global society. We're missing out on actually being real and fierce with our moment. Guys, these quotes I share in the chat section, whoever you are, if you would be kind enough, please share it in your social media, you know? Because I can't tell you, so many times in my life a quote saved me. Quotes are like wisdom quotes are like guardian angels, seriously. I'm not joking. Like a person can read a quote and be like, okay, I totally dodged unnecessary states of mind to enter. The whole point is a snowfall of language is covering the simplicity of the person abiding by their design. That means, imagine somebody comes up to you and says, do you know yourself? And instead of the person saying yes or no, the person can turn around and be like, or somebody says, what is the purpose of life? The person has to just turn around and be like, has it finished yet? I wasn't aware that the roller coaster ride has ended. You see, the nature of existence is you're journeying in the void, pretty much. You know, all ideological systems, before they were manifest, have bowed to the unborn, to the unknown. I can't see any system updating without the unknown. What does that mean? That means you are living in accordance to known patterns, known patterns. If you repeat these known patterns every day, eventually, at some point, you got to implement an unknown pattern. You got to bring in something. Even when I come and sit down or when I look at things, I would say looking at things is an art. children are raised to, are rushed. You know, I could say pretty much society felt like a burden. It took me a while to realize it is the only thing we have so far. It is the closest thing we have to being more than human. More than animal. That means regardless of how bad society is, you know, how unupdated or inefficient it is still better than the savage claws and biting game we were in. You know, those people, I will tell you, it's impossible to be depressed if you actually study history. It's impossible. I don't know how someone can study history and be depressed. You know, you're like, oh my God, they didn't have bathrooms back in the day. Oh my God, they didn't have cell phones, they didn't have internet. You know, so you just suddenly feel like as if it's like, what is there to be depressed about? I think people are depressed about not continuing their own honest efforts. I think that's a sort of intuitive dishonor. What does that mean? Imagine like we're all in a simulation in a computer from the future, and in this computer, a person is programmed to wake up, go to a store, and drink coffee. Now imagine that person wakes up, doesn't go to the store. Something in the whole system and the cosmos is feeling off. You know? It's like, what is this? This person was supposed to go to the store. Why is this person not going to the store? You know? I would say silence is the gate to the multidimensional, the stargate to the portal to the multidimensional, and sound is the portal to the singular, to the known. Isn't it fascinating that when we ask a human being, what do you know? The human being, I mean, technically, if an alien was watching, is the creature making mouth noises. Someone who doesn't understand, for example, English, though, it's like, and that doesn't even know the language English exists, is going to be like, what sounds is this creature making, this human being making? So that's the thing. It is artwork we have accepted as inseparable from the actual. There's a Chinese proverb. It says, when the pupil is ready, the teacher will come. I mean, honestly, it's not that the teacher will come. When the pupil decides it's a pupil, all you can see is a teacher, you know. Mark Van Doren says, wit is the only wall between us and the dark. There's a Yiddish proverb. It says, with time, even a bear can learn to dance. Thomas Campbell says, distance lends enchantment to the view. There's an Iranian proverb here, doubt is the key to knowledge. Um, so that's why I doubt myself. Aesop says, example is the best precept. There's a Spanish proverb, it says, it is better to be born a beggar than a fool. I mean, okay. Can't relate to that. Japanese proverb says it is better to be the head of a chicken than the rear of an ox. Oh my God. That means it's better to be a small winner than a big loser. I think that's pretty much it. Francis Bacon says knowledge is power. This quote is from Unknown, but it says mistakes are doorways to discovery. There's another unknown quote. It says put two and two together. Okay. There's a German quote where it says, what good is running when you're on the wrong road? And guys, the next quote, it just says Merlin. And I don't know, but this could potentially be a quote ascribed to Merlin from the legend of King Arthur. Merlin says, when you're sad, learn something. And the quote doesn't even have a dot at the end. It has a comma. It's not even the full quote. Thanks, whoever made this website. Really, guys, the thing about knowledge is that the most ultimate knowledge is knowledge of everything. And the only way you can know everything is as one moment. How else can we know? Because if knowing is instantaneous in accordance to experience, that means if we are to know everything, we have to experientially, instantly experience everything. And we cannot do that as long as we are a concept-based entity. As long as we feel we're entitled to being what the language promises, but the language doesn't have a mind. You do. The language is just ink on a page. You are the imbuer of the life in the words, if you have ever heard it. You see, that's the fascinating thing. Sometimes when you listen to someone, in my own life, when I listen to a lot of, usually, instead of pretty much, it changed. I used to listen to a lot of music. Now, instead of music, I've changed it to lectures. So I can tell you, think of how many different songs a person has heard, and if the person can realize listening is like a film. Pretty much the cool thing about listening is really you just want to see how else the world has opened its eyes. Nicholas Copernicus. To know that we know what we know, and to know that we do not know what we do not know, that is true knowledge. Isaac Asimov. If knowledge can create problems, it is not through ignorance that we can solve them. Plato. Human behavior flows from three main sources: desire, emotion, and knowledge. Desire, emotion, knowledge. Yeah, past, present, future. Past, present, future. That's it. Look at Plato. Usually, guys, when you see trios in a lot of literature, it tends to be a reflection of, you gotta sometimes think it's like what could the author have seen? So Mr. Within will add, how you see your past suggests your desire. How you see your present suggests your emotion. And how you see the future suggests the knowledge or what you will walk towards. What sort of new eyes that's authorized for you that you will walk towards. This quote, guys, by Plato is an ultimate quote. In this quote, one can realize everything. The ancient Greeks were really badass. I mean, when it comes to philosophy. I mean, really, what it is I don't think it was just in ancient Greece. I mean, all around the world, there were efforts of trying to comprehend the world. Philosophy is, I mean, Western civilization, of course, really owes it to the ancient Greeks, to I would say, Heraclitus, really. Everything we see, you see, for example, biology, you see that logi at the end, okay? That logi comes from logos, and logos was the inner guiding voice of the universe to man. You can say the greatest philosophers, they were in a symbiosis with a timeless being. There has been another tenant in the room, too many patterns. Just go look, just go and read how many philosophers they were inspired by unique archetypes in their unconscious. That means if we do everything like everyone else is doing, we will end up in the same place as everyone else. This is where the honor of your own eyes comes in. Where the person's like, wait a minute, there's so much information outside. But what about the first book every person has to read, which is their DNA? The person has to learn from how they are being the learner, the one who's learning. You know, there was a person who sat down and everybody ran. You know, not in that sense. This person sat. This person. Okay, I gotta say the story again. That came out differently. Imagine there's a group of people standing. Suddenly, everybody starts running except one person. And one of those people, out of all those, everyone except that one person who stayed back, one of those people who, alongside everybody else was running, stops and comes to this person and says, "Why aren't you running?" You know? And the person laughs and he says, "Because they're all running the wrong way." That's the ability of the mind. You look at things as a self that has never existed here before until now. We can say everybody is a unique dimension of knowledge. We cannot categorize the human being. What does that mean? That means, sure, we say, there's a heart, there's a brain, different organs in the body, yet it's one body. That means it's like when they are together, they can be separately seen, but no organ works alone. And it could be that no universal sector is alone. We could be under like advanced civilization, advanced extraterrestrial civilization surveillance. Who knows? We could be. Beyond the clouds, anything is possible or nothing, really. For me, one of the coolest things that opened up to me from realms of philosophy was Fermi's paradox. Oh my God, this was for me like the ultimate comedy. Because I could imagine Fermi being like, hold on, things have been around so long, but we're the only ones here? It's like, where are the aliens, goddammit? You know what that means? It's like, imagine you've set a party, you've sent invitations, and you're waiting on your planet with your species, and you're like, okay, when is everybody else going to show up? And you're like, what is this? Nobody's showing up. you know? I feel it could be two things. One, everything goes to a one point and then suddenly rewinds back. It could be a law to nature that things are extend outwards and they come back inwards. Just like how we inhale The cosmos could be inhaling between being manifest and being no longer manifest. That means space and matter, they're not mutually exclusive. Space and matter, matter and mind are a couple. That means if the matter is disturbed, so is the mind. If the mind is disturbed, so is the matter. If the mind doesn't care for the matter, the relationship breaks. If the matter doesn't care for the mind, what relationship? You see, we have to start living like multidimensional beings. There's no other way. And how we live as multidimensional beings is being like, okay, the outer realms are giving the person a certain model. Sure, thanks. You see that model, and then you also see what your eyes are giving you. Everybody has a different DNA, technically a different instrument. So everybody's existence is like you're an instrument. You're a walking instrument. Now, if you manage to play yourself like a master violinist, then because this is how we know, I would say, there was an error in the idea of enlightenment. Because what is it? Is it like a manufactured product from a factory? Everybody, all right, everybody get it. Everybody gets an enlightenment. No, for me, everybody is unique. That's the whole point of it. And when you can accept the uniqueness, you can see beyond it. You know, this is a trait, and usually it happens. You see it in what do you call it? Um, Certain intellectuals are socially um, uh, not fluid, I would say, socially not flexible. And an explanation for this, from a psychological view, is that anytime a person thinks they're special, they separate themselves from the environment. That is the nature of things. If you feel you're smarter than your world, you won't engage the world. If you think something makes the person special, this is why Superman felt really alone. It's like one day Superman got into a debate, got into an argument with a yogi, with like a realized liberated yogi, in the mountains. And Superman's like, buddy, I'm the source of power. What are you saying? I'm the most powerful man here. And the yogi's like, buddy, I'm the source of everything. You're the source of man. I'm God right now. What are you? You know? And Superman and this guy are fighting. It's like, which one is like, is super consciousness more superior or Superman? You know. The yogi's like, this person thinks he's Superman. What, this guy has an ego. Go meditate, man. You know. Superman just laser beams like half the mountain off, and the person's like, all right, let's practice silence. Knowledge is artwork because we're a dynamic being, because it's a changing world. That technically is like literally every day you wake up, the weather changing. That's like nature's artwork changing. So we can say, for us, this is the magnificent thing. All of knowledge, even we have physicists who are trying to find exact equations that can completely explain this universal phenomena. But the issue is, it is changing before we can measure it. That means I can tell you, for me, the scientific endeavor Since I mean, honestly, I gotta thank my aunt. One of my aunts, um, when I was very young, she lived in Hamburg, Germany, you know, and I lived in Canada, and she had come to Canada, and she brought this book to me, which I never read. I'm ashamed to say I read maybe a couple pages of it, but in the title of the book was Fermat's Last Theorem. That was the title of the book. It was a book on mathematics, right? And I remember the title, the concept was like, I just imagine you're a person randomly living, never, not, maybe not so fascinated about mathematics, but then this concept comes, Fermat's Last Theorem, you know? And I remember that was one of those moments where it took me years. Like that book was like maybe on my table, like untouched, you know? But the idea, the seed was planted. And I began looking at mathematics as if it's like hieroglyphics. And it became fascinating for me. What that means is there's even unknown variables to a linguistic system. When mathematics becomes language, then the person, I mean, my philosophy total on numerology totally changed. And especially with geometry, you know. That means in the future I might get into arguments with mathematicians because for me, geometry is its own language. I don't feel that geometry deserves to be a branch of mathematics. It's too superior to that. The dimensions of the realm. Everything is meaningless. We consider simple points of value. We place these simple points of value and we get a line of thought. I would say a sentence is like maybe like 3 minutes of a movie scene in the inner realms. Do you know? And when a person reads a book, if you read fast, you know, I will tell you, if you read books fast, just try it out. Try to just as a challenge, read the book fast and completely. And the strategy is you actually have to, your eyes are pretty much going from like pretty much in two angles. You're pretty much chopping up the sentence and snapshot comprehending it as if like you took a photo. When words become images, it becomes the inner realms become accessible. And the person, if they can remember who they were before anything else had to be something, or they had to be something to anything else, there's a freedom there. The poet Rumi says, a secret freedom, there's a secret freedom in a crevice that you can barely see. That means it's literally like a glitch in the simulation, an instant moment when the person realizes it's not object subject and it's neither subject object. It's that object subject have endlessly throughout time been changing roles, have been taking turns, like have been playing tag. Do you know chaos and order has been playing tag, you know, from the beginning. And there is something watching the chaos and order of the life. There's a story from Attar. I believe it. I don't know if it was from Khayyam or Attar. Anyways, there's this ancient story. This ancient story. There is a grave digger, and this man has been digging graves. Pretty much dead people come and he buries them for what is it, like the story says, a long time, like 30 years or something. The person has become an old man and he's been doing the same thing. Now a bunch of people, you know, younger people are passing by and they see this old grave digger, you know, and somebody, one of them goes up to him and says, hey man, what's the most shocking thing? You've been here for 30 years, like what's the most shocking thing? You know, it's like, do you have a goosebump story or something? Like what's the most shocking thing you've seen here? And the guy says such a unique answer. The guy says the most shocking thing is that all these years I've seen different People, I've buried different people who have died. I've seen how temporary life is and how everything changes. But there is something in me that is watching this change that has never died. It can't die. So literally, it was the gravedigger was living like an immortal in that graveyard to himself. The suggestion is attributeless witness of changing attributes. The watcher of the void can't be void. We thought we knew. We were wrong. We thought there was nothing here. We were wrong. And the only gate left, the only sea left across, is the unknown. The unknown where all knowledge has arose from and will return. That means if the person cannot watch their own silence and stillness, you will still live this life as a bewildered animal. The Ribu Gita says this. Unless there is true knowledge, we stumble for eons. So let's say somebody drew an artwork. From a fractal view, technically that is all knowledge. When I look at human existence, the purpose is the opportunity of experience. When I look at human experience, it can just use the moment. Now, if we can use the moment consciously, if 8 billion human beings can stop wanting the world to be specific, but rather co-create it through harmonious streams, we are drops now, and because we, as drops, experience evaporation, we feel that the river is meaningless. What do you mean? What collective civilization? What advancement? You know? But when we experience the river, I will tell you, it was like, for me, the first header I scored in a soccer game. Well, in high school, I was a striker. And the first header I scored, then it's like a new dimension of intensity I became comfortable with. So if the person endures until they could get through something intense, Technically, they have cultivated. Something has been added, you know? It's like how many times in different narratives, especially in fantasy, in fantasy narratives, you see the person first they fight an enemy, but then they after they defeat the enemy becomes their friend, and then they go on fighting other enemies, and those enemies become their friends, and the whole time the tribe is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The human species is here now. What shall the great performance be? All right, guys. So I've decided to just read a few poems before I end off. This poem is called The Madman's Canyon. It's from this poetry work called The Only. You were always a genius. Your mother always told you that. Gaia has never been unkind. Honor has never been unkind, for your existence has been allowed. You have gone from a grain of sand to the creator of the hourglass. You are a chaotic creator, always creating moments of beautiful insanity. Your order is never ordered, for your God was never shaped when his gaze composed your composure. A madman once said, "Don't listen!" And I listened. For there, for there was no better gaze than a comfortable disappearance. But remember, mighty being, if your world was flipped and the Creator gave you the eyes of all existence, could you be a God who would never demand? Would you let all imagery dissolve into a moment that never existed? Let yourself be calm and joyous through every endeavor. For all ends, for over all ends, the beginning has stood like a new savior. Do not bash theories when you think you are one. Wisdom was found in the emptiness of your ears. Be kind, my beloved, for transition is a wrath to the individual mind. If love came to you, would you kiss her in an instant? Would the temple and the I don't know, would the temple and the lap melt in your eyes? Love this life, for without you, there is none. The next poem I would like to read, it's called Garden of Golden Dreams. A wild man once wrote a love letter on a mountainside with his fingernails. Truth seems to be a step ahead, but are we left behind? Perhaps the magnitude behind our eyes has chosen to speak at another time. Is love a cage when shaped? Or has your world shattered like broken glass in a dark room? Give yourself life's greatest mystery and dissolve into the ambivalence within all that is unknown. Some men have began planting new seeds with an eternity that is driven without image. Life is a happening that will happen. Let yourself be absorbed by the beauty of endless passage, for the golden glow found in your garden of hidden dreams was a reminder that you are your own alchemy. Guys, that's a pointer to the sun. Oh, my beloved breath, you belong to the lungs of eternity. I hope so. The next poem is called Sense of the Senseless. Are your dreams confirmed? Who has kept your pot of gold afloat in this ocean of transparency? The lives of the dead seem to be a new look at life. Is the treasure revealer ready to reveal the heart of hearts? Is our destination at the beginning of time and space? There are those who cage the cage in another cage. Do you need voices that are not yours? Starvation leads to the hunger of many revelations. The end is near as you seem far. Give yourself a blessing that will never be forgot. If the whale was always pulled, it is now time to push through new weaves. The emporium that makes you think the emperor's wrath is about to take place is a placeless idea. Don't be so certain about your world, for it shall leave home in an instant to find itself always led back. The ocean was the madman dropped in his silent world. Where does your love come from? Where is the gift of the gifted? Transcendence is not a game of calibration, but the introduction of eternity to the self of selves. Oh my god, how long is this? Okay. uh, the ring on your finger is more than a symbol of faith, for your memory has always played in the chaos of all order. Be the wind that never carried anything, for freedom was seen to become unseen. Yeah, I was feeling pretty mystical in 2016. Guys, that's the nature of reality. That means the question should come, is truth something we receive or is truth something we express? Is it both of them simultaneously or a witness in an instant beyond it? And guys, the only explanation of this picture, if we wanted it to be naturally, is that the pond is actually hovering slightly above the waterfall. The whole pond is like on a disc, hovering above the waterfall. That would be the only, you know, explanation of this Photoshop picture. So, anyways, guys, thanks for listening. And if knowledge is artwork, then being aware of the unknown is to notice what you're drawing or how the moment is being drawn. Much blessings and all.